We conducted our second campaign interview with Julia Gillard last week. Tonight it's Tony Abbott's turn for his second, with a final interview from each in the shadows of the post next week. I recorded this one with Mr Abbott in Sydney just a short time ago. Tony Abbott, I'll start with broadband, since you did finally release your broadband policy today. You've promised a patchwork of different technologies to deliver a fraction of the high-speed internet access that would be delivered under the government's national broadband network. Your plan, according to at least one expert that I'm happy to quote and identify, would return Australia to a broadband backwater. Your comment?
Well, I just say that you can't trust the government that couldn't deliver school halls and couldn't get pink bats into roofs to deliver this highly sophisticated national network. Now,
but you're also acknowledging on the way through that you couldn't either because you're abandoning it.
Well, what we think that competition is better than monopoly, and we think that a range of technologies is better than putting all your eggs in the fibre basket.
OK, you've committed $1 billion for a metropolitan wireless network in place of Labor's commitment to build fibre, delivering high-speed broadband to every metropolitan home. How many hundreds or thousands of towers would you have to build? How many thousands of kilometres of fibre would you have to lay to connect them all? And what spectrum would you use to deliver a wireless network?
Kerry, look, just as the Prime Minister says, I say as well that I'm no Bill Gates here, and I don't claim to be any kind of a tech head in all of this, but we are going to have broadband running past, we say, 97% of households, and yes, we're not guaranteeing 100 megabits, but we are guaranteeing upwards to 100 megabits, and as I said, we just don't believe that recreating a government-owned telecommunications monopoly is the way to go. We think that competition and diversity of technology is the way to go.
But you wouldn't be delivering them to the homes, would you? You wouldn't be running them past 97% of homes. You'd be running them to exchanges.
Yeah. There's a backbone that we want.
Yeah.
We want to see a competition with these backbones, and then, of course, there'll be connections up to homes.
Professor Rod Tucker from Melbourne University, with a string of qualifications in this field as long as your arm. Very impressive, I might say, including the Australia Prize for his contributions to telecommunications, had this to say today, quote, "The idea that we could use very fast broadband based on mobile technologies and existing fibre, which is what you would do, defies the laws of physics."
Well, I accept, Kerry, that not everyone is going to like our system, but I just don't believe that you can trust this government to roll out a $43 billion bit of infrastructure.
But does that preclude you if the plan itself is good?
Well, as I said, I think we can do something that will be good for a lot less price. Our system will give Australians national broadband, but it won't be nationalised broadband, and it won't depend on just one fibre technology.
And it won't be anywhere near as fast or as efficient.
Well,
Professor Tucker also says this, quote, "Building a broadband network will, as the government has pointed out," this is the broadband network that they've presented, "have the same kind of transformational impact as the railways in the 19th and 20th centuries, but doubters and naysayers seem intent on living in the past." He also says, quote, "Broadband technologies are poised to transform society in ways we don't yet fully understand." So when you attack Labor for investing so much in this transformative technology that countries like Japan already have, how did you calculate what Australia would lose if you scrap the network?
The thing is, all of what you've just said, Kerry, depends upon this government getting it right. Now, this government hasn't got anything else right. Why do we say that they'll get this right? And this isn't just $2.5 billion in home insulation. This isn't even just the $16 billion in school halls. This is $43 billion that they're putting at stake here.
Your communications spokesman, Tony Smith, made plain at the press club today that he would only guarantee a peak speed. You talk about speeds of up to 100 megabits per second. He would only guarantee a peak speed of 12 megabits per second under your plan. Do you know what peak speed is?
Again, if you're going to get me into a technical argument, I'm going to lose it, Kerry, because I'm not a tech head, but we are offering 12 and up, and we think in
But you're
the vast...
guaranteeing 12.
That's right, but in the vast majority of cases, it will be a lot more than that, a lot faster than that.
Well, are you sure about can you really give that guarantee when you don't seem to know what peak speed is? I'll tell you what it is. It's quite an easy concept to understand. Peak speed is the best speed at which you can download material, usually when people are least likely to be using the internet, like at midnight. At other times, when there is congestion on the net, the speed will be much lower than that. So how can you say, as a matter of course, that the speeds your system will deliver will actually, more often than not, be much more than 12?
Well, Kerry, I take your point that if you want to drag me into a technical discussion here, I'm not going to be very successful at it because
but do you agree that that's not terribly technical to understand? Peak speed is the speed when the fewest people are using the net, which is in the dead of night, to borrow one of your expressions.
Okay, but what I'm saying is that our system is going to cost vastly less, but it will be there quicker than Labor's system, and it doesn't put all Australia's eggs in the basket of one particular technology.
When you say it'll be there quicker than Labor's system?
2016.
Labor's already rolling its out now, so it's started already.
But it's not a national system, and it won't be a national system until after 2016.
But because you're not a tech head, you can't explain your policy to us and how you will use towers, how much fibre you would need, and what spectrum would you would use when we're told there is none to actually deliver your wireless technology.
And what they're going to use, as I understand it, is to string cable on telegraph poles, which is hardly the most marvellously sophisticated thing to be doing in this day and age either. Look, Kerry...
It's fibre that where the signals will travel at the speed of light.
And Kerry, my communications spokesman addressed the National Press Club. There was an extremely long press conference with him and the Shadow Minister for Finance, and they went through all of this in great detail. And look, I do not have the same level of technical competence in this area that they have.
Don't you have to apply technical competence, as you call it, to things like budgets and the economy, technology? I mean, technology is right at the centre of our future, isn't it?
And the point I keep making, Kerry, is that the government says it's going to roll out a $43 billion national broadband network, but if you can't put bats in roofs without causing house fires, if you can't build school halls without rip-off after rip-off, why would you be confident they could do this?
Well, let's talk about school halls. When you talk about the waste in the government school building stimulus program, the Orgel report investigating claims of waste in that program found that there had been complaints related to 2.7% of all schools that have benefited from the program. That's 254 schools out of 7,900 schools where there were complaints. That presumably means there were no complaints at all from 7,650 schools for a program designed to bring benefits to schools and underpin the economy, provide jobs, keep the construction sector going. Is that really the disaster you've painted it to be?
But every single complaint that was investigated was found to have substance. Now, at the very beginning of the Orgel process, Mr. Orgel made it clear that he could not guarantee the anonymity of complainants. We know that there has been a great deal of institutional bullying of school principals who have gone public with this. I don't think anyone can assume that just because only 2.5% of or thereabouts of people complained, that there were no problems anywhere else. Those 2.5% of public complaints, I think, are the tip of this iceberg.
Well, you're making assumptions yourself. The Orgel report found that of the 254 schools there were complaints, half those complaints related to money. That brings it down to 125 schools out of 7,900 where some money, not all of the money spent, where some money might have been wasted. Do you acknowledge that?
Well, what I do state, Kerry, is that the Orgel report found that the cost per square metre across the board was vastly higher than the building standard.
5 to 6%?
No, in New South Wales, the cost per square metre, the average cost in New South Wales public schools was something like $4,500 per square metre. It was something like $3,500 per square metre in Victorian public schools. The industry standard is more like $1,500 a square metre. Catholic schools got it for about $2,000 a square metre, just on what the Orgel report found. Plainly, value for money was not being achieved. And in some cases, the cost per square metre was vastly higher. We had $25,000 per square metre in the case of some of these canteens.
More broadly on the economy, your campaign slogan focuses heavily on labour debt. But Joe Hockey acknowledged at the Press Club on Monday that if the coalition had been in government for the global crisis, you too would have had to run a deficit. How big a deficit? And can I ask you not just to say smaller than the government's? How big a deficit would you have run?
But we weren't in government. We are not in government. We would have pursued different policies. I can't say exactly what the deficit would have been with those different policies because we didn't get the chance to put those different policies into place. But what we have said all along is that the second stimulus was too much too soon. I suppose, had a premonition, if you like, Kerry, that the home insulation program and the school halls program were going to turn out to be disasters, and we were right.
So it'd be very lucky for you if you have these wonderful premonitions through government that you're able to rely on.
Well, as I said, we will bring
government by
an orthodox, sensible, prudent approach. We respect the taxpayer dollar. And you know, you've got the Prime Minister in the face of the Orgel report saying that a bit of waste doesn't matter. Wrong. It always does matter. And saying that you do exactly the same thing again. Well,
but it's
much
better
to learn from these things, surely, Kerry.
If you accept